So basically, I'm about to hand it off to Josh Rand. He's a closing attorney with Rand & Associates. I've closed deals with him, and he does a great job. So if you guys are looking for a closing attorney, I'd highly recommend him. He's here in Atlanta, so he's local to all you guys. And then he's going to speak for about 5 minutes about what he does and what they do, and talk to you maybe about some tips, some educational things that could be beneficial for you guys, things to look out for. Law is one of the most important parts of real estate, and so it's really nice to have an ally there. Josh Rand, everybody.
I'm a much better closing attorney. This is great to be in this room. There's a lot of great people, like Ben said, a lot of talent, and I want to help be part of your team. And how many of you would love to go to a closing attorney where you don't have to worry about the closing, whether it's a double closing or subject to or an assignment, or even if you need somebody to help you pull out money to do transactional funding to get your deal done at the last minute? Yeah, because that's some of the things that we can do for you. So I'll kind of peddle my wares here for a minute, and then maybe we'll ask a question, or just kind of maybe try to provide some kind of legal point of view that'll maybe be helpful for the crowd. But I've been a closing attorney for 18 years. I am a University of Georgia alumni and undergrad, actually, and then I went all the way to the Midwest to Omaha, Nebraska for law school and decided to come back. Been practicing for 18 years, and during that time, what I do is closings. And I work with investors, I work with real estate agents from the retail side, and just the whole host. I work with lenders. Many of the people in this room are actually my clients, and can kind of give me a testimony, which we won't ask for, but if you're talking to them, I'm sure they'll maybe tell you a story or two. But that's what we do. So, for example, this week, actually, we had a deal. One of the fellows in this room had a deal. It was a double closing that he had assigned, and his buyer had a lender on the hard money side who wasn't ready to close. And that deal was going to fall through because the seller had a closing that was lined up based upon them selling this house. And of course, you've been in situations where hard money lenders will sometimes kind of keep it along and kind of keep people on the hook. We were able to step in, get it closed, provide transactional funding so that deal could close and save that. So, nice. We want to be part of your team. We understand the process. I'm also an investor. I own some rental properties. I've done some flips. I do some hard money lending as well. So I understand the perspective from where you guys are coming from and what you're trying to accomplish. And then, of course, I have the added benefit of the legal perspective, which means I know how to get things done. I know how I can maneuver. When you go to a hard money lender, they're sometimes bound by the fact that they need an attorney to tell them what they can and can't do. So I kind of have some freedom because when I make loans, I can be the lender, the closing attorney, and if you don't pay me, I can foreclose on you too. I kind of know what I can get away with a little bit. But again, that could be a benefit to you guys on the end. And I've always kind of said, if I'm doing my job properly, then you're not really seeing what we do. And that's how we like it. But, we're a small firm. We close a high number of transactions each month. And our focus is just trying to provide a high level of service to help you guys accomplish your goal, whether that be wholesaling, whether that be investing, or you're purchasing to flip, or what have you. I'm going to give you a little tidbit that comes up. Two things that I think is important, and then if we still have some time, we can maybe entertain a question. But the one thing that comes up, two things, earnest money. When I'm dealing with a double closing, we often see a wholesaler who will try to utilize the earnest money on the B2C contract. Does everybody know what I mean when I say an A to B, B2C contract? Basically, A is the seller, the owner of the property. B is a wholesaler who is going to take title of the property and close just briefly, and then they're going to turn around and sell it. So A to B, B2C. Two separate transactions. You have a transaction with the original seller. Now the wholesaler buyer becomes the seller and sells it to the end buyer. We have situations where the end buyer, the wholesaler, will attempt to utilize the earnest money on the secondary contract. Just keep in mind, those are two separate contracts, and unless those contracts are communicating language-wise to where that person has kind of authorized they're putting their earnest money up, just keep in mind that you do need two different sets of earnest money. So that's something that comes up. The other thing is, let's see, what was it? When you are in an A to B B2C transaction, sometimes closing can be very important. And you want to put clauses in your, maybe, and your needs are different as a buyer and a seller. And I know I'm doing quickly, so it may not come across, but when you're a buyer, what happens if your seller goes ghost on you and all of a sudden disappears? And now you've got this secondary contract that you're bound in. So maybe put a clause in your secondary contract that says, hey, I'm a wholesaler, and in the event that I'm unable to acquire title, I have the ability to terminate or void this contract. Now you've got an out clause. So just something to think about. I think, Vince, I got another minute or two. Is there any, maybe just one question maybe that might be of interest for the group?
What was your name and number?
Oh, I've got cards and a little banner and just kind of some summaries of what I do. But my name is Joshua Rand. My email address is jrand@randlaw.net, randlaw.net. And my office number is 678-597-4950. I'll do that one more time, 678-597-4950. So thanks for indulging me for a few minutes. And,
Quick testimonial, okay?
oh, hey, how you doing?
Good. I'm John Holman. I've been involved in real estate in Atlanta for 20 years. I've done well over 3,000 transactions. This guy knows what he's talking about. So,
Well, I appreciate it. I can't ask for a better endorsement than that. So, thank you very much. I enjoyed the meeting and it's good information. So thank you guys.
I've known Dean for several years. It's really nice to have a good friend in the game who's done it the right way, nothing but good things to say about him. So he's going to share his story about how he went from working a corporate job to flipping houses full time. The only thing I ask is you guys be, please, completely silent if you can.
Not what you're doing right now.
Guys, please. Please be quiet so that the people around you can hear Dean as he speaks. So everybody, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dean Rappa.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I know you're here for the free drinks, so that's why I'm here. Or why I'm trying to turn this thing up. There you go. I'm not used to working with microphones, so if you can't hear me, just give me a thumbs up. So I'm Dean Rappa. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I ended up in Georgia in 1995 after a short 4-year stint in the Air Force. I actually came to visit a friend. My car broke down and I stayed. So I'm a middle child of 3, and I've always had an independent streak, and I guess that's kind of where that came from. But I'm also a serial quitter. So one thing in my life that I've perfected is quitting. I've quit from the age of 15 to the age of, I would say, 30, probably 20 some jobs. What else have I quit? I quit the Air Force, actually. I got out early on a program because my base closed and I got tired of sitting in a break room twiddling my thumbs. Prior to that, I quit college the first time. While I was in the Air Force, I was taking classes, and then I quit that again. After that, I got out of the Air Force. I went back to school. Now I'm 22 years old. I get stuck in an overflow room. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it's essentially like a common area that they converted into a dorm room with me and 4 other 18-year-olds. So coming out of the military with 4 other 18-year-olds at 22 or at 18, actually I should say at 18, if you'd have told me that there was a big maturity gap between a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old, I would have told you you were crazy when I was 18, but coming from the military environment to that, it was like pulling my hair out every day. So that lasted a semester and I quit that. I was on a reserve obligation, and that's when my car broke down in Georgia, and I decided to stay here. So fast track, quitting about 10 jobs, in and out of bartending, multiple sales jobs. I met a real estate agent. I was selling alarm systems, low voltage wiring, central vacuum, working with builders, working with real estate agents, basically trimming out the houses. And I was renting at the time, and she changed my life, honestly. She pulled out this little calculator, and she's like, "You've been running for how long?" And I'm like, "I don't know, like two years now." She's like, "Well, let me show you how much money I can save you if we can find you a house." And I knew what she was doing. She was a real estate agent. She wanted to sell me a house or find me a house. So she pulled out that calculator, and we went through the calculator, and over like 5 years, it was like $35,000 or $40,000 I'd have been wasting had I not taken that step and bought a house. So being independent and spontaneous, I'm like, all right, let's find a house. So 2 weeks later, we're under contract on my first property. That first property became a house hack for me before I even knew what that was, because at that point I really had no interest in real estate. I had 3 roommates that were paying my mortgage for me, and all the money that I was bringing in from work, I actually was putting towards repairs to fix the house up, to sell it on the road. At that point in time, I lost my job, and I was probably 10 days away from losing my house, losing my car, losing everything. I was working as a pizza delivery guy. And this was after making about $60-some thousand a year as an outside salesman. I thought the grass was greener. I switched positions, and it wasn't. So I started doing tile work. I started delivering pizzas, and I also started doing like UPS deliveries. So there was one season of my life where I was doing 3 jobs in a day just to make ends meet. And I finally got a break. A guy on my tennis team gave me another job. He gave me a loan. He helped me get caught up on my mortgage, but I was kind of like a slave to him for the next several years. He wasn't the greatest guy in the world. If you're in here, I apologize for saying that. But it was like dangling the carrot. I helped grow an appliance installation business to a nationwide contract with Best Buy, and I kept getting promised a raise and another raise and another raise, and that raise just never happened. It was at that point in time where I met my now ex-wife. I heard that too. So we're on our honeymoon, and I discovered the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I couldn't put it down. I read that book cover to cover, and I wanted to take action in the worst way. I was trying to take action, and I was bidding on properties. Back then they had an online, I think it was called Bid Select or something, where you could bid for houses. Anybody could bid for houses. And I was just slowly missing out, house after house after house. My motivation slowly waned after that. Then life started happening. So we got married, we had to get our house. So that cash flowing rental, that's what it became. It became a permanent rental. And that was when the market was starting to go into the downturn. When we moved out of it, I signed a lease purchase agreement on that property. So I collected 3% down, and then I rented it out to them for $1,600 a month. I thought that was pretty awesome. I had a purchase price probably $20,000 or $30,000 over what I could have sold it for on that day. In hindsight, it was a terrible decision. I should have just sold it, but the market crashed. That guy split. I went through bad tenant after bad tenant, then got a good tenant, and then I finally just went into that house. After I went through a painful divorce, that's where the quitting part comes in there. I actually had to have a paradigm shift and change my mindset completely. I was walking around through life miserable. I'd always identified myself with sports and athletics. When I got married, I had 2 kids really quickly, put on 20, 30 pounds, and I looked at myself in the mirror one January morning, and I'm like, what the hell did you do? I think we're all at times a product of our environment, and I became a product of the environment of eating Five Guys and fries and ice cream while she had her pregnancy purchase. I wasn't happy with that, so I started to form habits to try and lose the weight because honestly I was depressed and not very happy with myself. So I took the action there that later on would help me get to where I'm at now, and that was just one step each day. I put a calendar on my mirror and I wrote down 30 days. And every day I was just going to do 25 or 30 push-ups before I went to bed. So that was my goal. If I couldn't do 25 that day, I did 20. But I couldn't go to bed after brushing my teeth without putting a check mark on that list. So in 60 days, just doing that, I didn't step foot in the gym. I cut out ice cream after 8 o'clock at night. I cut out yeah, laugh. You've been there, right? And in that time frame, I lost 30 pounds just by doing nothing. But it was those little habits, progressing each day, never stepped foot in the gym, just kind of modified my habits, help build my discipline for that season. Which got me through my divorce and helped me shift my paradigm. It made me realize that creating positive habits would help my mindset, which basically took my whole world and flipped it. I started having back problems, and sports were kind of out the window. So at work, because I hated my job, it was miserable. Traffic sucked driving down to Atlanta every day from Woodstock. But I changed my habits. I started getting up at 4:44 every morning, going to the gym before work, and the intention was to get out of work early so that I could spend time with my kids. Well, I shifted from listening to sports talk radio every day at work to listening to Bigger Pockets podcasts and other investor podcasts and reading books. I bought any kind of audible book I could on real estate, and all day, every day, I consumed myself with it. So that when I went through my divorce, I knew there was going to be a season that this was my opportunity. I didn't have the support of my ex-wife and my passion. We kind of had our kids really quickly, and we put my stuff on the back burner for her business. So when I had the opportunity to change that, I did everything that I possibly could to take steps to do it. But there was this one thing that was holding me back, and that was being terrified. The fear of failure. We all identify with our environment. I grew up in a small Midwestern town where everybody has the same belief. You know, if you're making $35,000, $40,000 a year, you're doing well, and you're not gonna amount to anything more than that. So you kind of get stuck in that mindset of, well, this is my life, this is what I'm gonna do. Well, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to get better, and that was part of coming to Atlanta. And my belief was my dad, you know, he only made so much money, so when I got down here and I was making as much money as my dad, I thought I made it. But I still wasn't happy with that. So that's where real estate came into play. I took that rental property and I renovated it, and then I sold that and I made a nice profit on that. And then that was kind of my catalyst to start flipping. So from 2012 until I quit my day job on December 17th, 2017, I was doing a couple houses a year, but I was still afraid. I didn't believe in myself. It probably took about 50 people that I worked with who started following me on social media because I hired a mentor, and I worked with the mentor, and I asked them what I needed to do to take it to the next level. And he basically said, you need to tell everybody and your brother that you're a full-time real estate investor. You need to put yourself out there as an investor. Everybody you talk to, you are an investor. Don't talk about your day job because you don't care about your day job. Tell them you're an investor. And network like crazy. Go out and talk to people. Build relationships because you're only one person away from really, really big things in anything that you do. So I took it to heart. It was completely uncomfortable. I don't like to seek attention. I don't like to take selfies. One of the things I had to do was take a selfie every day in front of a house, or do a video every day in front of a house. And for me, it was absolutely miserable. But looking back at it, it was a huge catalyst to a lot of my first deals. I ended up getting probably 5 of my flips from just people that saw what I was doing on Facebook, that came to me that had a need that they needed help with, and I was able to buy that property from them. I've never spent a ton of money on marketing. I've never been like this big system development guy. My whole goal was never to flip 500 houses a year, 50 houses a year, whatever. I wanted freedom from the cube. So my goal was to get there, and I was slowly building towards that. And then in 2017, I bought into a new construction project. So I'm like, that's personal growth. Well, let me step back one step. Sorry. The biggest action that the mentor helped me do was I won an auction, and I actually, does anybody know Mike Cervenka? Yep. I went and looked at one of his houses in Atlanta. I was totally excited about it because my whole focus was like flipping either near work or on my way home because I wanted to be actively involved in it. So I went and looked at one of his deals, and it just, I didn't agree with the rehab on it. I thought it might have been a little bit off. So like talking about being devastated, like I thought I had the money. It was like the first time I had money lined up and it was good to go. And I went home and I had a Miller Lite, and then I started feeling sorry for myself. And then I'm like, well, let me just jump on my computer, and I jumped on Hubzu. Does anybody know what that is? Online website for auction website. It's not really that popular right now. Auction.com is more popular, but with the upturn, all that stuff went, it slowed down. But I've been following this house for 6 months, and I bid on it, and if you get outbid in the last 10 minutes, it keeps going. So I started at 9 o'clock, and about 6 Miller Lights later, I finally won this property at like 3 in the morning. And had I not gone on there and gone through that, I never would have bought this house, because when I drove by it, I was like, holy crap, this is a pile of crap. And it was a full gut renovation in Smyrna. And this was before Smyrna was hopping like it is now. And I get to this house, and the auction explicitly states that you can't talk to the tenant. So I'm like, ugh, how do I get around this? And my mentor's like, dumbass, you go knock on the door. I had lending home all lined up. I had my hard money ready, but I needed to get my construction crew into the house. And fear, right? What's going to happen? I knock on that door. What if somebody is pissed off because they're losing their house at auction next week? What's going to happen? All these what ifs, all these limiting beliefs in my head. He's like, go knock on the door. So I knocked on the door, and I had a conversation with this Korean war vet who was missing a leg, in a wife beater, in his underwear, in his wheelchair, and the door cracked open this much. And I just talked to him, and we had a conversation. And that conversation led to the door opening a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and finally he invited me in. So I got the pictures that I needed. He invited me back to let my contractor come in the next day. I got what I needed. We closed on the property, but what happened there is I made a connection with this individual, and he was about to be homeless in a week or two. And I'm not the person that's going to just kick somebody out in the street. So from that standpoint, I went and I tried to help this guy. And this is where faith comes in for me. I ended up going to my small group in my church, which was a catalyst of healing for my divorce. And I just put it out there, and I said, look, I got this veteran. He's going to be homeless. I want to help him. How can I help him? Does anybody know of any programs? And this guy goes, yeah, well, my mom, when my dad died, there was this one program called the VA, whatever. So I went home, I Googled that program, I called the first number that I found on Google, and I'm talking to a lady, and the lady lives 2 doors down from this guy. She couldn't help me, but she pointed me in the right direction to another lady, and the lady that I got a hold of, basically, I tried to get a hold of her all day, all week long. I got a hold of her Thursday or Friday. We're closing on Friday. I needed to fund it on Friday. I needed the house vacant. But I also wanted to help this guy. So I went into this with kind of a selfish thing, but then it kind of perpetuated into, I really want to help this guy. And I finally connect with this lady at it was like 4 o'clock on a Friday. And I'm talking to her and she's like, well, there's programs for the VA, but I really can't help you. And while I'm talking to her, the gentleman called me. And he's like, hey, Dean, I know that you said that you're going to give me some time, but I might need some extra time because I just got admitted into the VA with a kidney stone. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. No problem. We'll make it work. I click back over and the lady's like, well, that's it. The VA can't discharge him if he's homeless. So you need to get on the phone right away with the coordinator of the VA and find a place for this. They'll keep him and find a place for him. So that's exactly what happened. But it all kind of fell into place by taking that step. And it's kind of been my whole thing with flipping, and I want to help people. So my faith leads me forward in that. That I got in that house, there was 27 mattresses in it. It was awful. It was a full gut. My ARV going into it was 190. My budget was 40. My budget ended up turning into, my rehab ended up turning into $85,000. So then I'm like, well, crap, what do I do? My comp's right across the street, it sold for 190. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna get it appraised. So I got it appraised for like 240. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna list it for 259. Someone's gonna put a down payment down on this house. And I listed it the next day, and within 24 hours, I had a full price over asking offer for like 265. So that was my first win, and from there I just started going with it. But then the new construction project came along, and all kinds of city delays. That was going to be my job quitter. So in this business, like, the way I got started was in and out of credit card debt. Like, each job you would like pull a line of credit, so your credit goes up and your credit goes down. And this new construction project, I ran into a 17-week delay just from the city. We're sitting there with a finished house, and I can't get a water meter. So the lesson I learned on this one is make sure that you have enough capital to float you in the event that something happens like that unforeseen. While this is happening, I'm hating my job. I'm sitting in my cube wondering why I haven't quit yet, feeling sorry for myself, and I have this like business review that I have to do. And I'm going through the motions. I have 2 months to do it. I got 2 weeks left. And I'm like, I had this flashback to the year before. I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm presenting my business review and the VPs are in the back of the room just laughing, like cutting it up, not even paying attention to what I'm saying. Kind of like most of you are right now. So I got to that point and I'm like, this is ridiculous. It's about time, at least 30 of my coworkers had come up to me. They're like, look, you're flipping multiple houses a year. You're making good money doing that. Why haven't you quit yet? And I'm like, well, because I have to have 6 months child support in the bank. I have to have 6 months of this in the bank. I want to have living expenses covered. My past circumstances caused this huge fear that I needed to overcome. And that was losing my job, almost losing my house. It almost paralyzed me. So everything I did was super conservative. And then I had all these outside influences like my family that were unnecessary white noise because they cared about me, but it didn't help. It's like, we've seen you quit all these things your whole life. You're a quitter. Like you start something, you're excited about it, then you quit. But I had to tell myself, I haven't been quitting this, so what's the difference here? Have I found a passion in something that I enjoy? Everything that I've ever enjoyed, I've excelled at. So I took that mindset, and I'm like, you know what? They're not around me anymore. They live in a different state. We talk weekly, but they're not seeing my activities, they're not seeing my habits, they're not seeing my actions. So it's time that I stop listening to the white noise and I push the chips in on myself and see what will happen. So that Friday, I walked into my boss's office and I told him that I was promoting myself to customer. And he's like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, don't worry. I'll give you until the end of the month. I'll get you through the busy season. I'll document everything that I've ever done, and I'll help transition." And he's like, "Nah, don't worry about it." And I was like, "Oh shit," because I had a bonus coming up, and I wanted 2 more paychecks because I had a $4,600 hard money payment due on the new construction project. It was probably at best at least 3 months away from getting my water. Well, about 3 months away from selling it. About another 6 weeks away from getting my water meter. I ended up selling that house in July. I quit in December. So I had to hit the ground running, and it's exactly what I needed. Everything that I've been doing to prepare, networking with people, hustling, the social media stuff, getting outside my comfort zone, developing those relationships. As soon as I pushed the chips in on myself in day one, I was extremely intentional about my activities and my habits. Friends get pissed off at me because deals just kept coming to me. I JV'd with a lot of folks. I wholesaled. I flipped houses. Within the first 3 months of the year, I completely replaced my 6-figure corporate income that I made the year before in Q1.
Wow.
And most of it was flat out hustle. Networking, driving for dollars, guerrilla stuff that if you want it bad enough and you do the work, you can make it happen. Now, disclaimer and just a word of warning, it took me a long time to prepare, and I had to convince myself that I was ready. So if you are inspired and you want to quit tomorrow, make sure you have a lot of money in the bank, or you have a lot of practical application, because otherwise I wouldn't recommend it. But what I learned year one, I was involved in 36 transactions. I had a really nice year. Probably did deals with folks in this room. I learned that I was replacing one job in a cube with another job in my house. And that's not why I quit. I quit because I wanted freedom. I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. And as a part of my divorce, my ex remarried, because life happens. And my kids moved from Woodstock, 60 seconds away from where I used to live, 80 miles away to Watkinsville, Georgia. Once that event happened in my life, that really kind of became my why to fast track my plans. So that's why when the new construction project was dragging on and dragging on and dragging on, it was really wearing on me because try doing twice a week, 160 miles round trip to go watch a soccer game or piano or gymnastics and then get up at 4:44 the next morning to go downtown and work, and then after working, then go to your flip to make sure that everything got done. So that started to wear on me. That kind of became my breaking point. So long story short, it can be done, but I learned that I replaced the job with another, and what I focused on this year more is instead of quantity, I'm focusing on quality. I moved in, I talked to my CPA, and my CPA said, you make too much money, you need to buy some rental properties. So I went out and bought 5 duplexes. I'm in the process right now of refinancing them. So what I've learned through this journey is I no longer have a fear of action. When someone tells me something's in my best interest, I've started to do that because I've proven to myself that I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm not an expert, but I've surrounded myself with a lot of experts and a lot of really, really good people, and a lot of them are in this room right now. So my best advice to anybody would be, if this is truly your passion, or even if it's not your passion, just live it, breathe it, surround yourself with really, really good people, ask good questions, get rid of the fear, because especially if you're young, you're in your 20s, now's the time to fail, but just fail forward. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to kind of answer them. I got one.
Why 444?
That's a funny story. So 4:44. Why do I get up at 4:44 in the morning? I was studying when I made the paradigm shift and I wanted to lose weight. I needed to get to the gym early because I hate sitting in traffic. So I started at 5, and that wasn't quite good enough because I got up to my desk late. So I'm like, well, 4:45 is great. So I started getting up at 4:45, and then one weekend I had to change my alarm clock for something else. I think it was a Saturday, and I had to get up at 6. And then I was setting it back to 4:45, and I went one click too far, and it was 4:44. So I'm like, well, shit, I can be super productive with that extra minute. So, and 4 is my favorite number, so it just stuck.
Nice.
Yeah, just quickly, what was the hardest lesson learned?
Hardest lesson learned. Not getting started soon enough. I mean, if I could talk to myself from 7, 8, 10, 20 years ago, I would have identified that this is what I wanted to do and just taken action. And I guess back then it's really kind of unfair because right now with the internet and the access that we have to free content, it's available. If you want to do it, there's no reason why you can't.
Did you have any trouble with lenders when you quit your job and didn't have that?
So I'd already established a track record with lenders before I quit my job. I had enough experience, so lending was easy. I mean, I didn't have a problem. And then I started developing more relationships with private lenders. And then I like private lenders better because it's just, the process is smoother, less paperwork. I don't like paperwork.
What was the name of the website you said you did on for property?
Oh, Hubzu? Yeah. HUBZU, I think.
What does your business look like now in terms of flips, and like if you can, feel free to share it. Like, what's your portfolio looking like?
Yeah, sure. So right now I have 10 units. I just bought those 5 duplexes. I'm in the process of refinancing out of those. I bought them with hard money, renovated them. I took the rents from $450 to $650 on all the tenant units that the tenants stayed. I basically, day one, I did an estoppel agreement. Had them fill out everything. I raised the rents, told them to check yes or no if they were going to stay. I was hoping they would leave so I could take care of all the bulk of the renovations immediately and get the rents up. But they all stayed. And then the one unit I renovated, I got up to $810. Flips, I work on flips as they come. I wholesale the ones I don't want to flip. And I'm also heavily investing my time in learning more about multifamily. One last question.
What's your most consistent method of finding deals these days?
So I pray and they come to me. Honestly, so when I got really targeted, we drive around every day, everywhere we go. So if I was going to the grocery store or I was going on a walk or on a run, I would write down an address in a neighborhood that I liked. And then I would go to a list service that provided lists. and I would pull the data from that way. And I just did small targeted mail campaigns, and I'd mail. My best deals came off of stuff like that. I did handwritten letters, yellow letters, and then I also did some paid service when I felt like deal flow got slowed. But that's pretty much it. And then networking. I got a lot of deals just from people seeing that I'm active.
Do you work with wholesalers at all?
I do work with wholesalers. Yeah, I'm happy to JV with anybody that wants to bring me a deal that they don't have a buyer for. Got a really big buyers list. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Everybody. I'm excited to be here. Alright, so I'm glad that you were all able to make it tonight. Let's try and hold the conversation going on just because there are so many people. It's really loud. Alright, so I think this is the biggest turnout that we've ever had, which is, guys, please. Simmer down. Everybody, you guys will have plenty of time to network with each other. I know there's some fantastic people here. You guys will have plenty of time to network once we get to the networking portion of tonight. But all I ask is that we keep it really quiet while we've got the speakers talking, just because there's so many people. But the second half of the night is all open networking. If you really love your neighbor or you have really important conversation and you can't wait, you can go out that way or that way. But otherwise, let's try and keep it to a minimum. So raise your hand if this is your first time here tonight. Wow, there's a lot of people. All right, so I know that things are really packed. We normally don't have this many people, but we've been marketing the meetup a lot on Facebook, on Bigger Pockets, and a bunch of different websites. So the turnout's awesome to see. My name is Vince Crane. I host the meetup. This meetup has existed for about 2 years, mostly members from Bigger Pockets. Guys, again, please, just wait. Just wait like 30 minutes and we'll be networking. Alright, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the meetup, what the format is, and then we'll get into it. So this meetup has existed for about 2 years. It was started by Jared Sturm. He's been on the Bigger Pockets podcast twice. Great guy, and I could never replace him. But when he moved back to Cincinnati, he chose me to take over the meetup and continue to grow it. So about a year ago, we started having it here at the Ivy. I think we had about 350 people, and now we have over 1,300. So we're basically trying to figure out, as this thing keeps growing, how we're going to fit everybody in here. We might start using the downstairs of the Ivy instead. But we also have access to the Sky Deck, so once we get out to networking, you guys are going to have a lot more room to get out. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me. So just a couple of housekeeping things. The first one is, if you guys are not already in it, please join the Facebook group. It is called Atlanta REI Meetup. I know that a lot of you guys are already in there. You do have to say, yes, I will agree with the regulations and the rules of the group, or I'm not going to let you in. Actually, somebody else manages the membership, but they are not going to let you in. So basically, this is the largest free real estate investing meetup in the entire city of Atlanta. It's been one of our core principles to keep it that way, make sure the meetup is always free. We think that education is something that everybody should always have access to. So I appreciate you guys coming out and investing in yourselves. First thing I want to do is a big round of applause for you all, because you guys are taking action and you're here right now. I firmly believe that showing up is 90% of the battle, so for you guys to be here, that's really important. This meetup didn't exist when I first started learning about real estate. Instead, I was sitting in my cube at work at Home Depot Corporate, and I was listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast. And then finally, when this group was created, I started coming to it, I started networking, and that's when I actually started to do things. When you guys are around other people, especially in this group, there is so much talent in this group, you guys won't even believe it. So about 2 years ago, Jared always used to ask, how many of you have done a deal before? And about 10% of the room would raise their hand. And so I'm going to ask, how many of you guys here tonight have done a real estate deal before? Look at that fucking unbelievable number. That's so many people. That's amazing. You can see the F word, it's fine. Puts emphasis on it. Alright, so basically what we've done to keep the meetup free is after I talk and introduce myself to you guys, our meetups are normally sponsored by one of our preferred vendors. We've got a preferred vendor program. They sponsor the meetups. They help provide an open bar tab for a little bit usually. And then it also plugs you guys in with other resources. I connect with everybody in the group. So you realize when you join the group, you got to put in your phone number and your email. I contact you guys. How many of you have been called by me before? See us? Well, not that many, but I'm getting there. I'm working on it. There's a lot of you. So I try and make it a point to call every single person in the group, make sure that you guys are coming to the meetup, make sure that you guys have an accountability partner and a resource so that you never feel like you're in this game alone, because I know it can be intimidating, especially when you're first starting out. And it's really nice if you even have at least one other person that you can bounce ideas off of, ask questions to, and have it as a resource. So I started wholesaling. I ended up becoming a full-time wholesaler and started a business out of it. That has tapered down a bit for me, and now I'm a full-time realtor. I found a lot of joy in doing that. I really enjoy it. I get to do real estate every single day, and it's something that has been really good for me so far. So if you guys ever need a resource in that area, let me know. I can help. But also, I have a lot of connections with vendors. So if you guys need contractors, lenders, literally anything, attorneys, I can hook you guys up with people that I know that I've worked with before who I know do a really great job. I've heard a lot of horror stories of people getting screwed over by contractors and other people. So you guys are really in a great place. This is a great group of people. I've known a lot of the people here for several years. And so I really believe that this is the best real estate meetup in Atlanta. And for those of you that have been coming here for a while, I hear that from a lot of you guys as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, for those of you that were here last time, I recommended that you read The One Thing by Gary Keller. How many of you have bought it or read it since then? Yep. All right, 3 of you. That is great. How's it been? Good?
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. 1 person. All right. That's one of my favorite books of all time. I think that personal development is the biggest thing that's helped me grow in real estate and overall. I think that that's something that for a lot of you guys is going to be really helpful as well. I'm trying to read about 20 to 25 books a year. I think that that really, really helps your mind grow, and you just can recognize opportunities and possibilities when you're doing that. And then you're also in the same mindset as other people that are successful, and they tend to hang out with each other. So it just naturally elevates you to the next level of what you're doing. So if you guys hate reading, get Audible. You can listen to it, and you can get over it. But I promise you it'll change your life. If you guys can read 10, 20 books a year, I know my friend Alan right here has read over 900 books, many of which related to personal development and business. And he's one of the most intelligent people I've ever talked to. So I know that that's something that is a consistent driver of success. People you see on the Bigger Pockets podcast, the people that are hosting it, they're like that as well. So I think that that could be one thing that I really recommend to all of you guys, if it's something that you're not doing already. I have one really cool announcement for all of you. Jay Scott from the Bigger Pockets podcast is going to be here in September speaking at our meetup. I can't believe it, but it's going to be awesome. And I've got a really great story about Jay Scott really quick. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he posted the other day, and he said, I went back to my hometown in Maryland, and some lady comes up to me, and she goes, "Oh my God, you're Jay Scott!" And he's like, "Wow, I'm famous now. People know who I am. They recognize me." She comes up to him and gives him a hug. She goes, "You must know Brandon Turner. Can you introduce me?" So I told Jay Scott when he comes here, I'm not going to do that to him. So whenever you guys see him when he comes here, don't ask him if he knows Brandon Turner. You'll hit a soft spot. Thank you so much, Dean. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. And so one thing I really want to communicate to you guys is guys, wait. We're not to the networking yet. Give me 60 seconds, and then you can talk to each other all you want. You can leave here and talk to each other. You can talk to each other tomorrow. You can talk to each other for the next 29 days until the next meetup. Give me 60 seconds. All right, so first of all, let's hear it for Josh and Dean. All right, a couple quick things. One, I know a lot of you guys came in late. Go on Facebook, join Atlanta REI Meetup on Facebook. That is the name of the group on Facebook. We have 1,300 people in there. continuing to grow. I know it's really, really hot in here. Who thinks it's too hot? Raise your hand. Yeah, all right. I turned the AC down a little bit, and Jordan's gonna yell at me because he doesn't want it that low. I'm gonna turn it back up in a minute, just a couple degrees, so he doesn't complain. But we've got open access to the sky deck. Now that the sun's going down, it should be a little bit cooler. So you guys have all this space out here, all this space in here. I'm trying to think if there's anything important that I need to leave you with. I'm just going from memory here. I didn't take notes or write anything down today. Let's see. Okay, yeah. One important thing, because this is going to save a lot of your asses that are thinking about going into real estate full time. So Dean did take the plunge and went from his job to doing real estate full time, but from what he said too, like you got to have a couple things going and you got to be careful or you could end up in trouble real quick. I've talked to a bunch of you on the phone and some of you are like, oh, I just quit my job and started doing real estate full time. I've never done a deal before. I'm looking for one. Don't do that. Don't do that. Be careful. I don't want to see you guys end up being homeless like Dean's first seller. All right, so I think that about wraps it up. So real quick, if you guys want to stay in contact with me or with Josh Rand, our business cards are over here on this table. Go pick up our phone number and our email. Also, if you're in the Facebook group and you haven't heard from me already, add me on Facebook and message me. Message me your phone number and your email. I send out reminders for the meetup, and I stay in touch with all of you guys. So make sure that you guys message me if we're not communicating, so I'm in touch with all of you guys. All right, you guys can feel free to head outside and meet some great people here.